The Atlantic wind howled against the sails, the horizon stretched endlessly, and the ocean seemed like a vast, merciless void. For centuries, sailors of Europe had wondered what lay beyond, where the waters bent the earth into mystery. On July 8, 1497, one man dared to chase that horizon with a boldness that changed the course of history forever. His name was Vasco da Gama, and with courage, persistence, and a touch of ruthless pragmatism, he became the first European to reach India by sea. The journey was not merely about discovery, it was about wealth, power, and survival. Spices were worth their weight in gold, and whoever controlled their trade controlled the riches of the world. To sail east by sea was to risk everything, for the oceans swallowed ships, storms shredded sails, and disease claimed more men than enemy swords. Yet da Gama pressed on, not only reshaping global trade, but bridging continents in ways both glorious and brutal. His life is the tale of ambition carried on the tides, a nobleman with the fire of exploration in his heart, a commander hardened by the cruelty of the seas, and a statesman whose voyages forged the first chapter of globalization. This is the life story of Vasco da Gama, the man who opened the world. Vasco da Gama was born around 1460 in the small coastal town of Sines, Portugal. His father, Estevão da Gama, was a knight and a minor nobleman, serving as a commander in the Order of Santiago. His mother, Isabel Sodré, came from a family with connections to English traders, hinting at the international currents already swirling in Vasco's bloodline. Portugal at this time was alive with maritime ambition. Under Prince Henry the Navigator, explorers had been pushing farther down the coast of Africa, seeking gold, slaves, and a sea route to the fabled riches of Asia. Young Vasco grew up in this atmosphere of restless adventure. The sea was not just part of his town, it was his destiny. As a youth, Vasco da Gama learned mathematics, navigation, and the art of seamanship. Unlike most nobles, who preferred life at court, Vasco embraced the life of a sailor, earning a reputation for discipline and decisiveness. These traits would make him invaluable when commanding men across unknown seas. By the 1490s, Portugal had already claimed Madeira, the Azores, and parts of West Africa. Bartolomeu Dias had rounded the Cape of Good Hope in 1488, proving it was possible to reach the Indian Ocean. Yet the sea route to India remained incomplete. Spices, pepper, cloves, nutmeg, cinnamon were the jewels of the East, traded through Venice and the Ottoman Empire at staggering prices. To bypass these middlemen and sail directly to India would make Portugal unimaginably rich. King Manuel I of Portugal sought a man bold enough to finish what Dias had begun. He chose Vasco da Gama. On July 8, 1497, da Gama set sail from Lisbon with 4 ships: the São Gabriel, his flagship, the São Rafael, the Berrio, and a supply ship. His crew numbered about 170 men, sailors, soldiers, priests, and interpreters. The voyage was perilous from the start. Rounding Africa meant months of uncertain winds, dangerous currents, and uncharted waters. But da Gama proved a master of strategy. Instead of hugging the coast, he employed the Volta do Mar, a wide arc far into the Atlantic before turning back toward Africa. This maneuver used prevailing winds and currents to speed the journey, a technique learned from earlier Portuguese sailors. The fleet stopped at the Cape Verde Islands, then sailed down to the west coast of Africa. At the Bay of St. Helena, da Gama's men clashed with local inhabitants, an omen of the violent encounters that would follow. They pushed on, rounding the Cape of Good Hope in November 1497, a feat still fresh in the memory of Europe. For weeks, storms battered the fleet. Ships were damaged, men grew sick, but da Gama pressed forward, determined to complete the voyage that had eluded others. They sailed up the east coast of Africa, stopping at Mozambique, Mombasa, and Malindi. In Malindi, they secured a crucial ally, an Arab navigator, often identified as Ahmad ibn Majid, who guided them across the Indian Ocean using the monsoon winds. In May 1498, after nearly 10 months at sea, Vasco da Gama's fleet reached Calicut, modern Kozhikode, on the Malabar coast of India. For the first time in history, a direct sea route from Europe to India had been completed. Da Gama presented himself before the Zamorin, the ruler of Calicut. But the meeting did not go smoothly. The gifts da Gama offered, hats, coral, cloth, sugar, were unimpressive compared to the luxury expected by Indian rulers accustomed to trade with Arabs and Chinese. Worse still, Muslim merchants, who dominated the spice trade, viewed da Gama as a threat and poisoned the Zamorin's view of the Portuguese. Still, da Gama achieved his goal. He obtained enough spices for a return cargo, though at high prices. The voyage home was grueling. Disease ravaged the crew, killing over half. Yet when da Gama returned to Lisbon in September 1499, he was celebrated as a hero. His cargo of spices was worth 60 times the cost of the expedition. Da Gama's success electrified Europe. He had not merely discovered a sea route, he had opened a new age of global trade. He was granted the title Admiral of the Indies and showered with wealth and honours. But Portugal's ambitions did not stop. In 1502, da Gama was sent again to India, this time not as an explorer, but as an enforcer. His orders were clear: secure Portuguese dominance through trade, diplomacy, or force. The second voyage revealed a darker side of Vasco da Gama. Leading a fleet of 20 ships, he returned to Calicut, determined to break Muslim control of the spice trade. When the Zamorin resisted Portuguese demands, da Gama responded with ruthless violence. He bombarded Calicut, seized merchant ships, and executed crews in horrific ways, sometimes burning them alive. In one infamous incident, he captured a pilgrim ship carrying hundreds of passengers, including women and children, and ordered it set aflame. Few survived. These brutal tactics struck fear across the Indian Ocean. Portugal's message was clear: they would not compete, they would dominate. Da Gama established Portuguese strongholds at key ports, forcing local rulers into treaties under threat of bombardment. The Portuguese soon controlled the flow of spices at their source, bypassing traditional Muslim and Venetian middlemen. After his second voyage, Vasco da Gama returned to Portugal, wealthy and feared. Yet his career was far from over. Others, such as Afonso de Albuquerque, took over the expansion of Portuguese power in Asia, while da Gama receded into semi-retirement. In 1524, nearly 3 decades after his first voyage, Vasco da Gama was sent back to India as Viceroy of Portuguese India. Corruption and mismanagement had weakened Portugal's position, and da Gama was tasked with restoring order. Despite his age, he brought discipline back to the colony, punishing corrupt officials and reinforcing Portuguese authority. But his health faltered. Within months, he fell ill and died in Cochin, India, on December 24, 1524. His body was later returned to Portugal, where he was buried with honours in Lisbon's Jerónimos Monastery, a monument to Portugal's age of discovery. Vasco da Gama's voyages changed the world. He proved that Europe could reach Asia by sea, breaking centuries of monopoly held by Middle Eastern traders. His route reshaped global commerce, ushering in an era of European maritime empires. But his legacy is double-edged. To Portugal, he was a hero who brought wealth and glory. To many in India, he was a conqueror whose methods were brutal. His life embodies the contradictions of exploration, courage and cruelty, vision and violence, discovery and domination. Facts about Vasco da Gama. Vasco da Gama's exact birth year is uncertain. Most historians place it around 1460. He was chosen for the India voyage partly because of his reputation for toughness and loyalty to the king. Da Gama's first voyage took nearly 2 years round trip. Scurvy killed most of his crew. Fewer than half survived the return journey. His arrival in India shocked local traders, who were used to dealing with Arabs and Asians, not Europeans. Da Gama was not the first to sail to India. Arab and Indian traders had been doing so for centuries, but he was the first European. His second voyage was infamous for its brutality, especially the burning of a pilgrim ship. Vasco da Gama was granted the noble title of Count of Vidigueira. His voyages marked the start of Portugal's global empire, stretching from Brazil to Africa to Asia. Today, Vasco da Gama is honored with monuments, bridges, and even a football club named after him in Brazil. From the wind-swept shores of Sines to the bustling ports of India, Vasco da Gama's life was a journey across uncharted waters, literally and figuratively. He was the man who dared to sail beyond the known world, who linked Europe and Asia by sea, and who set in motion a global exchange of goods, ideas, and power that continues to shape our world. His story is not one of unblemished heroism. It is a story of human ambition in all its complexity, of courage against the odds, of cruelty in pursuit of power, of vision that expanded horizons. Vasco da Gama proved that no ocean was too vast, no barrier insurmountable, when driven by determination. He leaves behind a lesson as timeless as the tides. The greatest journeys begin not with certainty, but with the courage to set sail.